Hello, once again. Still not feeling great. I felt that one coming. I don't know why I didn't start after the video. Anyway, so this video is on Hearthhull the Worldseed. Yes, it's a pre-con upgrade. I could technically say that's what this video is rather than me building the most degenerate shit possible. Hell yeah. Anyway, we're going to go with Hearthhull. So Hearthhull, if you don't know, is a spaceship, and spaceships are allowed as commanders, even though they're technically not creatures. And it has a station ability like every spaceship. It is a 4 mana, and if it has 2 station counters, you can pay 1 mana and tap it to sacrifice a land to draw 2 cards and play an additional land that turn. And then if it's got 8+ counters on it, it's a 6/7. I hate that it is that, especially nowadays. Don't you fucking dare. That has flying, vigilance, and haste. And has the ability of whenever you sacrifice a land, your opponents will lose 2 life. Very simple effect. How could this be degenerate, you ask? Well, it has a lot of sacrificing land synergy, so let's go into the cards that sacrifice lands. So we have a Zurin Orb, which is a 0 mana artifact that sacrifices land for life. We have a Sylvan Safekeeper, that is a 1 mana creature that sacrifices lands to give Shroud. We have a Crop Rotation that sacrifices land to get more land. We have Scapeshift that sacrifices land to get more land, but on a mass scale. We have the Braids Twins, which allows me to sacrifice lands while making my opponent sacrifice lands. We then have the God Eternal Bontu that allows us to sacrifice lands for card draw. We then have Harrow that allows us to sack lands for 2 lands instead of 1. Then we have Springbloom Druid and a Roiling Regrowth that does the exact same thing as Harrow. We then have an Elvish Reclaimer that allows us to sacrifice a land to get a land. Doesn't matter what land. We have a Gitrog monster that sacrifices land on its own just generic ability, but also gives us card draw for the land sack. We then have a Corvold that allows us to sacrifice land to put a 1/1 counter on him and draw a card. Also, it's when he enters and attacks, and then any time you sacrifice a permanent, he gets that trigger of getting a card draw and a +1/+1. Planetary Annihilation, which allows us to make our opponents sack up until they only have 6 lands, including ourselves. Shouldn't be in a pre-con, by the way, because that is mass land denial. I know some people don't think it is, but it absolutely is, because if your opponent's on 10 lands, you are denying them 4 lands, which is still en masse a land denial. And then under the same fort, Forts of Ruin, which allows us to make each player sacrifice lands equal to the number of cards in my hand. Which I'll tell you now, with a couple of cards that make us draw cards, you can easily do this like turn 4 with 7 or 8 cards still in your hand. So goodbye all of your lands. And then because we're sacrificing, we also have a lovely Sazriel, which allows us to put one counters on our creatures equal to the power of this guy every time we sacrifice a land, which is insane. And then we also can play lands from graveyard with him. Talking of things that gain when we sacrifice lands, we have a Mayhem Devil, which pings everybody when anybody sacrifices a permanent. We have a Scouting Swarm, which if I have 7 lands in my graveyard, when I sacrifice a land, I create a copy of a creature on my board tapped. Or if I don't have 7 lands, I just create a 1/1 flying tapped. We then have... That's it for the land sack good cards. That was a long section because this deck is filled with cards that will make you sacrifice and gain advantage from sacrificing your lands, because the commander himself also does it. Stupid. Then we go into landfall. That's right, there is some landfall in here because obviously we're sacrificing lands and ramping. We will have Ancient Green Warden, which will double all of our landfall triggers. Also, we may play lands from our graveyard. We then have, obviously, the Scoot Swarm, the Rampage and Balos, the Tireless Provisioner, the Ice Till Explorer. Those are the 5 landfalls that make sense immediately. Then we have what I like to call the Lagak quad. We have the Spitfire Lagak, deal 1 damage every time you get a land. We have Retreat to Hagra, which will ping everyone for 1 every time we play a land, and then also we gain 1. We have a Tanuk that pings our opponents for 1 every time we play a land, but on the second time that happens, we draw a card. Sabatender, which once we play a land, we ping everyone for 1. That's right, we're doing a bunch of landfall, hurt you things. Now, if we're playing landfall, surely we need to play some ramp. So with our ramp, we're playing Farseek, Nature's Law, Azusa, Lost But Seeking, Oracle of Moldiah, which allows us to play lands from the top as well. Exploration Broodship, which allows us to basically get an explore effect off of that. We get a Stomping Goblin. Is it Stomping? No, Sprouting Goblin, sorry. Getting head cold. Basically it has kicker. We get to grab a land when it enters, and then if it was kicked, we get to when it ETBs, if it was kicked, we get the land. And then also we can pay a red and tap it to sack a land to draw a card. He's another land sack outlet. We then have ones that do mass graveyard recursion of lands. Obviously we have the Aftermath Analyst, which goes infinite with a card in the land section, you'll see. We have a Splendid Reclamation. We have a Lumra, because yes. Then on the same vein, we have a Will of the Sultai. And then we have the Worldseed's Rage, which allows us to pay X into it, and we will get ourselves. I'm just going to do that so you can see the card somewhat. I hate this fucking glare sometimes. But yeah, you pay X into it, you get that many lands from your graveyard or hand. We then get a Undergrowth Recon, because again, once every turn we get a land from our graveyard. Then we go into the ones that just let you play lands from grave. So obviously we have the Crucible of Worlds, we have the Conduit of Worlds, and we have a Titiana Nature's Force, because that allows us to play our lands, well, our forest specifically. Next we're going to go into, because a lot of our lands, spoiler alert, will enter tapped, and then a lot of these mass land revivals also make your lands enter tapped. We have a couple of cards that make it so we don't have them enter tapped. We have Amulet of Vigor, we have a Spelunking, and we have a Horizon Explorer. Simple as that. This is also ramp. So's this. So yeah, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We then have a Sylvan Scrying to search for a land to put it to our hand, not to the board, so it doesn't count as ramp, sadly. We then have Life from the Loam, which allows us to grab lands from the graveyard, and Dredge, so we put more in the graveyard. We then have a Soul of Windgrace to discard lands to get abilities. I personally prefer to draw a card, but what are the other abilities? You also get Indestructible and Gaining Life. But yeah, I usually do the draw a card one. We then have Ramp in the form of not land ramp. So we're going to go with Ignoble Hierarch, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. Very obvious ramp. Then we're going to go into the removal. We have Deadly Rollick, we have Beast Within, we have Rakdos Charm, which is more like artifact removal, but it's still removal, and Infernal Grasp, because yeah, those are the removals. Next we're going to actually get into the meat and potatoes of the deck, which is the lands. So we're running the basic Command Tower and Yavimaya. You know, you want to have every land type be forest, but you also want to have a Command Tower because you're playing Commander, obviously. We're then going to go into the funny ones that kind of fit the deck. So we have Cavaron Memorial World, which when it's stationed to 12 will make us sack lands for card draw, is it? No, to make a creature. So you sack a land, create a creature. Which again, we're getting abilities off of our land sack. And this is a sack outlet in the land section. It does enter tapped, but it does tap for red, so can't go wrong. Next we have Ba Sing Se. Like, earthbend your lands on a land. bear mind, if you earthbend a land and then sacrifice it with many of these sack outlets, it just comes back and triggers a landfall trigger as well as a sack trigger. Yeah, Bowsing Say is kind of mandatory for this deck. Next we have, oh god, I always never know how to pronounce this one. Mudian Hatchery? Basically, you tap it for black, put a counter on it, and then when it dies, if you remove, for each counter that was on it, you create a 1/1 flying insect. We then have a Dooms of the Dead, because we're sacrificing lands, we might as well get a zombie out of it too. We then have a Scavenging Ground, so we're getting into the lands that can sacrifice lands themselves. So technically this should have been over this section. But yeah, we've got Scavenging Grounds, which you can sacrifice it to exile each graveyard. So not amazing, but like in a very, like, if you have no other option or your opponent's playing a graveyard deck and they are popping off, you have the option. I will say also Lotus Field is a sack outlet on its own because you sacrifice 2 lands to even have it enter the battlefield. We then have the very salt-inducing lands that sacrifice themselves, which is Strip Mine and Wasteland. Yes, we have land destruction because, okay, even in a casual table, this is a bracket 4 by the way, but even in a casual table, if you're playing bracket 2, this is not mass land denial, this is 1 land denial. And if your opponent is playing a really bullshit land like a fucking Rogue's Passage in a Voltron deck, you need to be able to get rid of that shit. So, boom, that's what that is. Next we have the fetch lands. We have Wooded Foothills, Verdant Catacombs, Bloodstained Mire. Obviously, technically you can run all of them because they are not color-coded, but I like to keep the ones that are color-coded just for the sheer fact of then I know no matter which one I crack, I can fetch any named land. We then have the basic searches in Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, and Vibrant Cityscape, and Fabled Passage. You're running all 4 because, again, sacrificing lands is good for the deck. We also run a Riveteer's Outlook. So these are all of the fetches as well. Now, for the fetches that you have to pay a life for that get any of the named land type, we are running the Shocks. We're running an Overgrown Tomb. I pulled the fancy one from my Lorwyn pre-release. I did not play the pre-release, I just bought a pre-release box or 2 because they had spares, and I pulled this fancy one. It's so nice. We then have the Blood Crypt and the Stomping Ground. Next, ones you could search is your Raucous Theatre, Underground Mortuary, and Commercial District, which are the Surveil lands. Again, we're running a lot of get lands from graveyard effects, so it doesn't hurt to surveil a land to grave. And the last one that you can search that matters, you could probably search more, but these are the ones that matter, is let me try that again. Ziatora's Proving Ground. Basically, it's the triome for the deck. Next, we go into the last bits. We've got an Underground Stadium because Commander 4-player pod usually enters untapped for black and green. Cinderglade and Vernal Fen also usually enter untapped because you are running a fair few basics. We then have the land that goes infinite with Aftermath Analyst, which is the Shifting Woodland, because basically Aftermath Analyst has the ability of pay 4 mana, sacrifice it, get all of the lands from your graveyard back. This then, if you have Delirium, can copy a creature in your graveyard. So if you have Aftermath Analyst in your graveyard, you have this copy Aftermath Analyst, you then tap it for the Aftermath Analyst ability, sacking itself. It is a land, so it will re-enter. If you have enough lands in your graveyard or a land sack outlet, and anything that makes lands enter untapped, you have an infinite with infinite mana. So that's why I'm running so many land untappers as well. We then run the Bajuka Bog because, again, graveyard decks are, at least in my locals, very prevalent. So I am running a bit of graveyard hate. Next we go into the basics, which is the final bit. So we are running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mountains. And 1, 2, 3, 4 mountains. 5 swamps, 4 mountains, sorry. So The reason we're running quite a few basics is obviously we've got the basic searches in the form of Terramorphic and all that. But then again, also if your opponent plays a card that goes, "I'll destroy this thing, you get a land," you can search for a land usually, which means once again landfall triggers. So I had it once where a player was on 1 life and the opponent of him also wanted him dead but didn't have something that would kill him. But I had Spitfire Lagak out and they had a removal spell that would make me search for a land. So they removed what was it they removed? I think they removed my Ancient Green Warden because they really didn't want me to get double the trigger and hurt themselves more. And then obviously I searched for a land, killed the other player, damaged him, and then to be fair, the guy still lost in the end, but like it was a smart play from him. So yeah, that's the deck. Not much to say. It's just a really fun pre-con when I bought it. I decided to upgrade it really heavily. It's very good. Definitely deserves the bracket force section. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. As usual, the deck list will be in the description as a Moxfield list. Once again, it's so you can see if I ever make upgrades to the deck, but also if you want to just browse through the decks I do have there, because I have plenty. This will be the last one I record today, because honestly I am feeling a bit tired. I think me being ill is taking the energy out of me. So I will see y'all in the next one. Ta-ta for now.